Hello viewers, welcome to my channel. In this video, I will be explaining about what is ConfigMap and what are all the different steps that you can create ConfigMap, and then how you can inject those ConfigMap inside your pod and deployment YAML. So why do we need a ConfigMap? The ConfigMap can be used to inject environment properties or configuration during your runtime. So in a real time, you might be having a environment specific files like a configuration, properties, port numbers, all that has to be injected during your runtime. So based on the environment where your container it's running. So ConfigMap comes handy during that such situation. So yeah, as you see here, there are like 3 different steps where you can go and create your ConfigMap. In step 1, you basically you can create a ConfigMap by passing each keys and values by running the first command. So let me go and do that. So this is a command which is called like passing your keys and values through literals. So if you look at closely this one, I'm creating a ConfigMap name called testconfig1, and I forgot to tell one thing. ConfigMap is nothing but it is a key and value pairs. So in this command, if you see here, your environment is a key and value is development, and then I do have another key which I'm passing in the same command. Here the port is the second key and the corresponding value is 9090. So kubectl get cm. Yeah, if you see here, the test config one has 2 data. Okay, one is environment, another one is port. Kubectl describe cm. Okay, you see here, so you can see all these keys and values under the data. Environment is a key. Follow whenever if you want to see when you describe and see a colon, anything before colon is basically your key, and after that is followed by your property, followed by a value. So this is like a step 1, and then I'm going to follow the second one. Which is nothing but where you can basically inject your entire config property file itself as let's assume that let me show you the file. I do have this particular file. If I wanted to inject all the values inside these properties as a config map, I can do that. So for that is the second step. If you go back to my presentation, so where you can pass the entire property file as a input, and that will help you to create your config map. I'm going to run the second one. Okay, kubectl get cm. If you see one thing, even though the content is the same, environment equal to development and port equal to 90, but the difference between the testconfig1 which has a 2 data and testconfig2 has only 1 data. The reason is that the way, even though the content is same, but when you pass entire property file, your property file will consider as a single key. All the content within that property file will be your value. So let me show you the difference. kubectl describe cm and then testconfig2. Okay, you see here, I told you anything before the one will be your key. Here in this case, config underscore demo dot properties. Under that you will have only one value, which is nothing but your entire content of your property file. So when you wanted to inject during your runtime inside your container, you need to pass this as your key. that means you need to literally give a dollar and config underscore demo dot properties, then only you will get these values get printed. Yeah, just be very careful when you are substituting those keys in your real time in your runtime container. Yeah, that is something you need to remember it. So now I'm going to do the third step. So step 1 and 2 is complete, and you know the difference between 1 and 2. Now going back to the third, which is nothing but is your YAML file, where you are passing your YAML as your configuration file. Out of all these three, this third one is a recommended one, where most of the companies, organizations, that they follow this one. So going back to my Kubernetes cluster, let me clear it. And if you do ls-lrt, you find there is a file called configmap data underscore YAML. This is a file where you see the same thing like environment and key and values development and keys port and values 80. I'm going to create this config map by running this command, create -f, and then I will pass this as my parameter, kubectl get cm. Now you see here like the config data is the metadata for this particular YAML. You see that data is 2. Okay, so anything when you directly pass properties, there you will see get the only data as 1, but rest of the step 1 and 3 you will see the entire data as single literals. So going back to my presentation, so yeah, now you learn how to create your config map by using these 3 methods. Now next thing is that how you can use this config map what you created that can be injected into pod and deployment.yaml, that I will be showing in a minute. Let's go back to the next slide. So now you have created your config map. Now you need to inject that config map into your pod. There are like 2 different methods. One is like a config map key ref, and second one is your volumes. So volumes is mostly the recommended one. Then when compared to config map key ref, I will tell you the reason why little bit later. So if you see here your config map metadata name is config data. Since I do have like 2 different keys and 2 different values, so I need to use the same reference everywhere. In this case, like my environment is like this can be any name, -name. Environment, you can keep your name, it can be any name, but this config data should match with your config metadata name. And then this key is nothing but it is just the same key what you already passed. So if you look at here, this is like a very simple config map with the 2 keys and 2 values. But in case if you assume that if you have like 100 keys and 100 values, your pod will looks even bigger, and you have to literally scroll down each and everything and need to determine one after the other. It is very tedious and sometimes looks very ugly, your pod. So yeah, now I think I told you the answer like why your volumes is better. So let me go and create this pod.yaml in my Kubernetes cluster. So this is my YAML file, cat, and then I'll open this file also. It might be useful when I run the command kubectl create -f. I'm logging inside my Kubernetes container to check if the variables what are the variables that we created, whether that can be seen inside the container. I'm going to go and check that. Inject data. This is my pod. I'm going inside this pod. I'm going to go and check now. So echo dollar. So basically when I need to give this one, if I give this value as like 7 else, then I have to give echo 7 else. In this case, since I gave environment, I need to give dollar and environment. You will get answer as development. And similarly, if I give a echo dollar port, you will get like 80. Okay, so but in real time you will not just doing the echo like what I did now. You will be like using some files. Already you will have some files that is part of your application image that you run as a container. What I'm saying that this image, when I create this image, there will be a file that will be having reference to this variable. Let me show you what file that I am using it in this example. /user. So in this case I have the file env.sh, where if you see here I'm using $environment and $port as a variable. When I go and run env.sh, you will get the output as your $environment will be replaced to development, and the port $port is replaced to 8080. So this is what I told in the very beginning, that your config map will help you to inject your variable during the runtime. So let me go and see the other type how you can inject your config map, which is nothing but your volumes. Let me do a exit ls minus lrt, and this is, so let me go back to my presentation. So you can see that so much of mappings that you need to do. Sometimes it will lead you to confuse, but if you look at your volumes, it's very simple configuration. No need to copy multiple name and all that, but it's very simple. Like all you need to do is just your config metadata has to be like given as a reference, and then very important thing is that you need to create a volumes. Volumes are nothing but it is a space holder for your pod, where all containers running in the same pod can access that volumes. So in this case, the two very keys and values, whatever that I have created, I wanted to store somewhere in the some folder location. So for that I have created a mount path as /temp. This mount path will be mounted to this volume what I have created in the under the spec. So when I run this pod, I can literally see these values under that /tmp path. Let me go and run and show you through demo. Let me clear it. Okay, now I'm inside the Kubernetes container. I wanted to make sure that /tmp has those values. When I do ls minus lrt, you can see there are like two. So one thing what you need to observe here, whatever when I say /tmp, these values will be stored as a file under this path. So that means that you can do a cat and then get those values and pass that as a variable to some of the other file that is running inside your container. Similarly, cat environment, this will print your as development. So I hope you understand how to create a Kubernetes config map in 3 different ways, and then what are the 2 different types, how you can inject your config map inside your pod and deployment. So if you like this video, please like it and subscribe it. Thank you. Bye.